and that God can move mountains. And today, as we focus on the idea that mountains can seem like obstacles, we're looking at the story of Abram. That is Abraham before God claims him fully. And I want you to imagine this. Abram is 75 years old. So all of you who are nearing 75 or are over 75, I want you to think about this. God comes to you and says, you are going to pack up everything you own, and you are going to bring it with you into some new, strange, foreign land, and I'm going to restart your life. So at 75 years old, Abram hears this voice from God, and he's got all of this stuff he has to do. He's going to take his wife and his nephew, and they're going to travel, by foot through the desert, and it's going to be really hot. And God passes by Canaan and says, oh, just so you know, eventually your ancestors will live here, but let's keep going, we're not done yet. And he keeps moving him and moving him and moving him through the desert with all of his stuff, through trials and tribulations. And if you read the rest of the Abram and Sarai story before they become Abraham and Sarah, you know that there's lots of interesting things that happen while they are on this journey. And I can imagine that Abram, when he heard this, said in his mind to God, absolutely not. I am not packing all this up and moving it to some godforsaken place that I know nothing about, that I have no way of knowing how long it's going to take us to get there. And you keep promising that I'm going to have this kid, but I'm 75. I don't think it's happening anytime soon or at all, God. There is absolutely no way that I am going to make it through this. I'm not doing it. And I imagine he would have dug his heels in the sand a little bit until God convinced him that this is not an obstacle. This was an opportunity. And what was on the other side of this journey was far more than Abram ever expected or thought. All of the hopes and the dreams that he had buried down deep inside of himself, thinking that they were never going to happen, could be fulfilled. I think our lives get us to a place like that sometimes, where we believe that the things that we are trying to conquer will get in our way. We believe that the process of getting there is far too difficult, and so why would we even try? Because there is absolutely no way that that mountain is ever going to move. And so that mountain becomes our stumbling block and prevents us from being able to do what it is that God had called us to do. In my children's moment, I talked about learning to ride a bicycle. And it really did take me until I was in the 5th grade to learn how to ride a bicycle, okay? I mean, that's a little slow. I also was in 3rd grade when I learned how to skip, and I was in 5th grade when I finally figured out how to jump rope. Okay, this might account for why I am so clumsy now, and why pretty much all the time, every week, I have some sort of new injury. But it took me so long to figure out how to do these things that all of my friends knew how to do, right? Jump rope, most kids learn how to do in like the 1st grade, right? It literally took me to the 5th grade. I remember in 5th grade, we had the jump rope for heart fundraiser for heart health. And my 5th grade teacher, who had been my gym teacher pretty much my entire elementary school career and had watched me struggle so hard to figure out how to jump rope, when we were at that jump rope for heart marathon, and I am sitting there jumping rope for like 4 minutes straight, and my gym teacher walked over to me, and she had tears in her eyes because I had finally learned how to jump rope. I really thought I was never going to conquer that. I really believed that there was no way that my awkward body was ever going to figure out how to make things go at the same time, and I had to do things with my hands and things with my feet and things with my brain right? Because in gym class, I used to have to turn it and watch and step over it. It was bad. I had training wheels on my bike for a really long time. I couldn't skip until the 3rd grade. And I remember skipping down my parents' brick walk and finally feeling like I had gotten it. I also remember all of the other things later in my life that felt like obstacles to where I was thinking God was leading me to be. I remember sitting in my Latin class, and I took 6 years of Latin, and going, there is no way I am ever picking up a dead language ever again. And I was in AP Latin my senior year of high school, and I was talking with my Latin teacher who had literally been my Latin teacher since 7th grade. And I said to her, I said, Magistra Higley, there is no way I am ever picking up another dead language. It's just not going to happen. I'm not touching it. I'm not dealing with it. I'm done. I said, this whole last 6 years has nearly killed me. I am done. Then when I was in college, I always loved history, particularly Greek and Roman history. And I was gazing through the course catalog, and my sophomore year there was a class called the Trojan War available, and it was all about the Trojan War. Who would have thunk, right? So I took that class, and my professor was this very petite woman who had been teaching classics at Smith for her entire career, and her name was Justina. And I just adored her class, and we had so much fun. And at the end of the year, she said to me, Gabrielle, we're starting a new Intro to Greek class next year, and I really think you should take it. And I looked at her and I said, no. You're really nice, Justina. You seem like a great lady. I really have enjoyed this class, but there is absolutely no way I am taking ancient Greek while I'm in college. Like that life is behind me. I took Latin. I'm done. And she looked at me with this like sort of crazed look in her eye that you know when somebody's super passionate about things and things just sort of kind of click in your brain. And she goes, you studied Latin? She goes, you'll be perfect. You have to sign up for this class. And I walked out of this class going, absolutely not. There is no way I am going to take Greek. And the next fall, I was registered for Introduction to Greek with Justina, and my life forever changed in that moment because I came into the classroom and sat down, and she goes, oh, I see you're not taking Greek. And I gave her that look of, yeah, I'm here. And I struggled and I struggled and I struggled through Greek because it's not the easiest language to learn. There is a reason why people say, well, it's Greek to me, because it's difficult, right? That's funny. Thank you for laughing. I appreciate having people here now who actually laugh when I make a joke. It's lovely. And it was such an adventure of 2 years, and I took enough classes to minor in it, and it became this thing that I looked at as an obstacle that actually led me to loving Greek and understanding the Bible in ways I didn't expect. That same class brought me to getting a job in working for a Pauline researcher at Smith, and I was his research assistant that I wouldn't have gotten if I wasn't studying in the classics department. And it was just this thing that I looked at as a bad thing, this thing that I was absolutely never going to do. And it turned out to be something that completely changed the trajectory of my life. And that's just a little thing, and it's a silly thing, just like learning how to ride a bike or learning how to jump rope. But there are lots and lots and lots of things in our lives that we look at as obstacles. There are these mountains that we see that we go, there is no way God's ever going to move that, and it's just going to get in my way, right? We all know this. We all know that there are those things in our lives that we look at and we say, no, it's just too difficult. This whole thing right here, not going to do it. It's fine. I remember getting to the point in the ordination process, which is 8 years long and wildly frustrating, and it is not an easy or a fun process, and it is not a process that makes any sense to anybody but the people making the process up, and that changes from year to year. So I remember looking at myself in the mirror and going, I'm done. Okay, we're just going to like slowly back away and think about all of the other things we could be doing if I didn't have to deal with the red tape and the frustration of having to do this. And then those mountains would move because God would move them for me. Move them out of my way. So all of a sudden I ran out of excuses of why I wasn't going to do that thing. It's like when we talk about poverty, and I hate when I'm in conversations with people, particularly religious folk, Christian religious folk, who say, you will never be able to eradicate poverty. And I go, why? And they say, because Jesus says the poor will always be with you. And I look at them and I go, don't think that's what he meant when he said that. And just because a line is said, oh, the poor will always be with you, does not give us permission to give up. It doesn't give us permission to just throw in the towel and say, well, if I can't eradicate poverty, then I won't do anything. For our prayer walk, right, so we midstream switched what was supposed to be a crop walk and turned it into this really fun and beautiful prayer warrior walk in which we collected food and we collected money. And in the month that we collected, we raised over $1,300. And with the food that we collected, we fed over 95 families. That is incredible, amazing work. That we could have turned around and said, you know what, this is too hard, this is too much, this is too complicated, we're not doing anything. We're just going to throw in the towel because the church building is closed and we can't get together and we can't do the things that we normally do, so why do anything at all? And instead, we turned around that narrative and we fed 95 families and raised over $1,300 in 4 weeks. Do you know how incredible and amazing and what a gift that is, that in the middle of a pandemic, the work of the church is still being done? Because here's the reality. The church has never closed. Our doors may not be open on Sunday mornings, and we may not all be gathered here together in physical person, but the spirit of the church and the work of the church continues. Because the church is not a building. The church is a people. And you fed 95 families. And the money that you all raised will continue to feed families right here in Pearl River with a donation to St. Stephen's Food Cupboard, across Rockland County with a donation to People, and in Spring Valley, where they struggle with lots of folks who are food insecure. There's a high number of people who rely on the Spring Valley UMC for food. We're making a donation to them as well. And that's where you all fed 95 families. Even in the middle of a pandemic, where the pandemic could have really felt like this mountain obstacle that we were never going to get through, you were able to continue to do the work of the church. You were able to continue to love the lost, the last, and the least, to feed those who were hungry, to give hope to the hopeless, to give light in the darkness. Every time we feel like the thing in front of us is going to get in our way, if we only focus on how awful it is, if we always say, I ain't touching poverty, because Jesus says the poor will always be with us, and we've been working on eradicating poverty for centuries, therefore I will do absolutely nothing about it, then we have given up on the movement of God. We have given up on where God is going and what God is doing in our midst. We have given up on trusting that God will lead us through, over, around, or remove that mountain. If Abram and Sarai and Lot at 75 years old can give up their entire lives to follow God, to wander through the desert and to see land that will eventually belong to their ancestors that they have no way of having in that moment, if God can lead them through the desert to places unknown and places unseen by their eyes before, if God can take them out of where they were and bring them to where he wants them to be, can God not do the same thing for you? If God removes every obstacle in the way that Abram and Sarai will meet, can God not do that for you? Look, the world right now is filled with anxiety and fear and what ifs. There are people every single day who are going, what if I lose my job? What if I can't put food on the table this week? What if I lose the roof over my head? What if the person I was before COVID before COVID hit, is not the person I will be when COVID ends? What if? And every one of those what ifs in our brains creates these giant mountains that we look at as immovable objects. There's no way and no time and no place in which those things are not going to be a problem for us. And they can be if you just walk away and throw in the towel and say, there is no way I'm getting through this. Or you can trust that God will lead you where you need to be led. That sometimes the thing that you fear the most will actually bring you to a different, more beautiful place. Trust that even if you lose your job, that God will provide. Trust that even if you are hungry and go searching in food, maybe a United Methodist Church that didn't throw in the towel when COVID came, collected enough food to feed your family for a week. And maybe when you get back on your feet and the world feels a little more stable, you give back as well. Maybe we stop looking at the what ifs as life enders or as opportunities to fill our heads with anxiety and worry and inability to move. And instead, we trust that God will take us where we need to go. If we really let go and let God, if we really trust that no matter what happens, God will take us to where we need to be, those immovable objects become mountains that move. But here's the important part, and here's the part that matters, and here's the part that depends on you. You've got to get on and try. Just like there was no way that if I kept staring at my two-wheel bicycle, that I was going to be able to ride it. And there was no way that as long as I sat on that bicycle with my mom's hands on the handlebars and the back tire, there was no way I was ever going to ride that bicycle. Sometimes you've got to get on and pedal. And yes, there will be moments in which you fall. There are moments when Abraham falls. There are moments when Solomon and David and Elijah fall. There are moments even when the disciples fall. But you get back on and you keep going, trusting the one who is and was and is to come will remove every mountain. So long as you follow him, you'll get to where you need to be. And what will be there is far more incredible and amazing and beautiful than you've ever imagined. So let's get going today and every day. Amen.